Okay. Good morning. One more time for the cheap seats. In this 2 to 3 minute speech presentation, you will bring an artifact of your choice. What is an artifact?
Any type of visual representation.
Any type of visual representation, such as a magazine or poster or t-shirt, photo, a work of art that you did on your own, perchance a 15 snippet second of a music video or a commercial you want to share. Maybe it's a song that you want to play. You can utilize whatever you want because it is up to you as your job within this speech to justify to the audience how your artifact, that thing that you're bringing in, fulfills the social functions of rhetorical discourse. There are 6 different functions of social rhetoric. So we already talked about what characterizes something as rhetoric. When we know it's marked as rhetoric, like it's planned, it's adapted to an audience. If it fulfills those 6 characteristics, you're like, rhetoric. Social functions of rhetoric are a bit different. Do they have to have all 6 markings? No. And sometimes you won't find them always having those 6 markings. They will have more than one of the 6 social functions. I can guarantee you that. But don't feel like, oh, this doesn't have all 6, so I can't use this artifact. But your job is going to be to tell us how this artifact represents that social function. So out of these 6, you are going to go through them, start to understand them a bit more. You may remember one of them from your exam about something called good power. Remember power, everybody? Yes, that's one of the social functions of rhetoric. Okay, it distributes power. What do we mean by social? What are social? What's a social anything?
Connect with other people.
What?
Connect with other people.
Connecting with other people. Connecting with our cultures. Connecting with even our communities. Think about all the communities, all the cultures, all the environments that you're a part of, whether it be school, work, your group of friends, your family, your organizations that you're part of. All of these have elements to them that are probably being, okay, so all of those environments or these contexts, within each of those, you will oftentimes find yourself utilizing rhetoric. And there's a lot of ways that we can use rhetoric to negotiate our way through those social environments. There's also ways that we can utilize rhetoric, obviously, to be persuasive inside of those environments to get our needs accomplished, to have our goals accomplished. That is going to be your job. In the interest of time, as it says here, and for the purpose of speaking, you are only going to choose 2 to 3 of those functions of social rhetoric. So you do not need to pick all of them. Pick 2 or 3. And those will serve as the main points for your speech presentation. Within your main points, you should justify your claims against descriptions and definitions of the characteristics. If this part doesn't make sense, within your main points, you should justify your claims against the descriptions and definitions of the characteristics. 1, you can always look at the videos that I have up in our eCompanion that will help to explain what that means a bit more. But 2, when we go over the body today, that will hopefully become a bit more clear. In this speech, you will use an attention getter. You will present a clear central idea throughout. You will develop your main points. You will use full transitions to get you from one point to another, and you will draw to a close, giving us a friendly reminder of how the speech ties together and a reminder of what you spoke about. If you don't have a clue what any of that means, do not worry. I am here to help you. Can't I move like this?
Yeah, it's on the all the way to the right. A little higher. Like an inch height right there.
Thanks.
The bar you have to drag is on the top.
It's so off. What's it called? It's not calibrated.
Oh.
Let's pull this up a bit. Here's the other elements that we'll talk a bit about today. This speech should follow the basic principles of good delivery. What is good delivery?
Clear delivery.
Clear. Who's somebody that's a great deliverer? Thank you. Okay. Let's go back to this. What makes me a good deliverer?
You're enthusiastic.
I'm enthusiastic.
Practice.
Okay, practice. What? That's right, I am. Loud.
You make eye contact.
Oh, eye contact. Gestures. Fantastic. When we ask, what is good delivery? It is often hard for individuals to figure that out. They can't really put their finger on it. When you say, what's good about Obama, you're like, what is good about Obama?
He's understandable.
It's understandable. We like Obamacare. But why would people say that he's a good speaker?
Because everybody will, assuming, so you're there to hear him. He speaks clearly. You understand what he's trying to tell you, and he gets his point across well.
Okay. He has really great writers. Good. So in the case of content, absolutely, he's clear. Are you talking about like what he's trying, the message he's trying to get across?
Well, just himself voicing the message is getting across.
Okay, good. Because the words are there. People always say, well, let the facts speak for themselves. Facts don't speak for themselves, my friend. Who has to speak for them? You. You have to make those facts come alive. And I can say 600 people a day are dying. But if I say it like that, nobody's very interested. 600 people a day. Right? How do we effectively communicate? It's oftentimes hard for people to put their finger on what makes good delivery because it shouldn't be obvious. And that's why when you combine all the elements together, effective eye contact, gestures, vocalization, vocal variety, the use or the non-use, if you will, of filler words when I'm speaking. All of these elements only add to the content of the speech because the vehicle through which that message needs to get delivered, you, has to be just as well tailored, if you will, as the content of your speech. So we will practice delivery, and I'll give you some tips today about things that you can do to practice for yourself. You're going to seek to be as clear and dynamic as possible. Dynamic doesn't mean like, yay, and I'm so enthusiastic and I'm so excited. I don't expect any of you to get up here and speak like me, okay? Everybody has their own style. Just because I'm super excited and that's my approach doesn't mean that you need to be. I'm not looking for you to be me. I'm looking for you to be the best of you. But in regards to the word dynamic, people usually think that that has to do with enthusiasm. It does not. Dynamic means that it's ever-changing. We do not want one stagnant line of your delivery. And here is my picture, and this is what it's about, and this is what it supports, and now I'll move on to the next one. This isn't going to do anything for us as an audience to get engaged or to get excited about what you have to say. And as we know from the symbols or the resources of rhetoric, in order to enable our own personal, political, psychological power, it is imperative that we work on our arrangements and our aesthetics, if you will, in this case, as Aristotle spoke about. Because a speech will require you to use visual aids, please be, I don't know why I wrote that, please incorporate the guidelines to using visual aids when preparing and delivering, which are right there on your sheet, and you can watch the video about later as well. Your speech number one checklist on Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, whatever day you are delivering, that is when you should go through this checklist and say, okay, do I have my speech, well, I wrote introduction here, but do I have this speech, a one-page keyword outline of your own, a positive can-do attitude, your evaluation sheet, and please note that you don't have to turn anything in to me. And all that is right there in that packet as well. This speech is 2 to 3 minutes. Never in your life are you going to have an opportunity where someone says, take all the time you want. We have all day. We are a very time-oriented society, if you will. Time is important to us. We have a high connection to it in our value system here in the United States. We know that anytime we're doing business, going to an office, doing a presentation in class, etc., we must be timed. In that sense, it is imperative that you make sure that you are timing yourself and fitting within the time parameters in order for you to get your points, but also in order to allow other people to what? Have their time to give their speech and do their delivery. Absolutely. So make sure that you are timing yourself when you are going through this speech. The first thing that I am going to do is go over some of the delivery elements, and then we'll get into the content of this speech. What I encourage all of you to do is to write out your speech in full. But if you recall from the syllabus, and when it talks about speeches and presentations, it says that you must speak extemporaneously in this class. What does extemporaneous mean? I'll give you a helpful hint. It means being fully prepared, but delivering from a brief set of notes. In this class, we do not want to read, we do not want to memorize, and we don't want to come in and speak off the cuff for a prepared speech. One, this isn't a second grade classroom. I know that you all can read. If you sit and read a speech, what does it do for the audience?
They're not as connected to you.
We're not as connected because we're avoiding what? Eye contact. Also, why do people who rear children read to them before bed? Yeah, because it lulls you to sleep. We all, when we learned how to read in English, learned to read in a specific pattern. Right? And this goes up and down the whole time. When we read also, we were taught to read very fast. That was kind of the idea as to what made you a good reader. And thus, individuals often will miss the punctuation in their speech. When we don't have something like a period or a comma, it doesn't allow our audience to catch up on what they were speaking about. It doesn't give our audience to catch up on the concept that maybe is going to be talking about. It doesn't give our audience the opportunity for, what else? When we don't have our clear, because Barack Obama would always demonstrate a period or a comma. Why? Because you need to know when one idea and the next idea starts. There we go. And punctuation does that for our audience. They don't have a piece of paper in front of you. This isn't an English class. They are asking you to tell them the message. It's very important that that is what we are doing, is utilizing our punctuation and making ourselves as clear as possible. That being said, reading a speech does nothing for your delivery. It becomes incredibly problematic. Memorization also is problematic. Why? You don't have that kind of time. I don't want you to have to memorize 5, 7, 10-minute speeches in this class. But two, when you memorize, what does it start to become if you aren't a seasoned speaker? If I could memorize a speech, I would, and I would memorize it in a way because I'm trained to do so that seems like I hadn't had it memorized, that this is such an authentic experience for me. This is the first time I've ever done it. But
blank out.
We may blank out. What does a memorized speech sound like, though?
Robotic.
Right. It sounds simply like you're reading it, but now you're looking at me. And like reading it in your head. Or oftentimes people will do this because they can see it in their head, as I used to do when I would use like note cards. I would read it in my head. But it also becomes sound like what? Yeah. Thanks. So, this idea of roboticism, we don't want to do that. Therefore, we speak extemporaneously, being fully prepared but delivering from a brief set of notes. Write out your speech in full. Once you write it out in full and you like it and you're like, that's a good one, what I want you to do is transfer it onto a second piece of paper. And that is what you will bring into class with you. You are allowed one piece of paper, front and back, for your speech presentation. That one page, front and back, should have only the key ideas that you are going to talk about for each sentence, if you will. If you write it all out, what are you going to do? And if you practice with your full written out speech, what are you going to do?
Read it.
You're going to memorize it. And then it's going to become both of those memorizing and reading issues in terms of delivery. When we have key words and phrases in front of us, it allows us to look down our paper, grab where we are going, and have a conversation with our audience as if we're sitting down having a cup of coffee. And that's when it becomes this extemporaneous delivery that makes you into a natural speaker. Does that make sense to you all? So what are we going to practice with? Just the,
No cards.
yeah, just that one key page. Front and back keywords of what you want to say. If you eventually have a quotation from somewhere, then of course you would read it. Those aren't your words. Write that down in full. If there is a part that you're like, ooh, Amanda, but I wrote it so well and I want to memorize it because it's so amazing, memorize it and say that one line because you need to get that out. But it should be a melange, if you will, of maybe some reading, speaking off the cuff, talking to us. When you are writing your speech in full, I encourage you to write not how you would write for English, because when we write for English, we write in the what person?
First.
Okay, good. Yeah, not the first, because that's I, me, you. Your English teachers don't like that. Have you noticed that? Yeah, okay. Because there's not an audience there. In turn, where's our audience here? Right in front of us. So what should we write in? Now say it.
First.
There you go. Now we should write in first person. Write your speech how you would say it if you were having an everyday conversation. Not everybody speaks the same. So I want you to be able to use your own syntax and use your own style and use your own phrasing. All of that is really important to making you feel comfortable in your delivery, but additionally, it's really important to make you become clear and easy to follow and easy to watch to the audience. When you practice with that one sheet of paper rather than practicing with the entire speech in front of you as well, it allows you to look down, and every single time you say this new idea or this new line or we move into a transition, it may be a little bit different. And that's okay. Because if you were telling a joke every single time, it would be what? The same. Robotic, you would use the same hand gesture, and you would use the same facial expression, and you would use the same. No, you would do it different every time, depending upon your audience and the environment that you're in and the response that you're getting, right? So all those things are very important when you're delivering. Practice with that one sheet of paper, deliver it different every time, and note that it is only going to help your delivery style. I know that it is fearful to do. Oh my gosh, if I don't have it there, I won't be able to remember. You wrote it. I guarantee you, you'll be able to remember. If you look down at the paper and there's a couple words there, you're going to be able to work through what you were trying to talk about. If you've practiced it a good amount of times, you'll remember what you were going to talk about. Not having everything in front of you doesn't mean that you won't have a reminder. It's right there in front of you. It's just not everything that you intended to say. Does that make sense? Okay. That's what we talk about for delivery and the speaker's outline, as we call it, or speaking outline. There's other elements that go along with delivery, and we can do a couple of different things for the purpose of this class. I want to encourage you that you can use this podium. The podium is here for you to put a piece of paper on. That is all it is there for. It is not here for you to lean on. What does in regards to leaning, what does leaning communicate to all of you? Maybe that I'm tired, that it's a little lazy, that it, etc. This is a professional speaking occasion, and thus standing up would be a more effective way to do it. Now, what does this communicate to you all? Confidence. Do I know what I'm talking about? No, but I look like I do, and that's an important factor, right? So standing tall for all of us to see. Culturally, again, in the United States, these are symbols or signals to us about meaning something else. Communicating confidence, communicating poise, communicating that you know what you're talking about. So when we're working on our posture, this podium should not be utilized for anything else than putting your piece of paper on. It can also be used for one other thing. I like to call it the death grip. If you have a lot of communication apprehension and anxiety, this can be a great resource and tool for you to get out some of that adrenaline that you have going through your body. So feel free to utilize the podium as a death grip. However, you must note that individuals don't typically talk like so. They don't talk without using their hands if you have full working use of your hands. Something like, oh my gosh, you are never going to believe what happened to me today. So I was walking down the street and then this guy jumped out of nowhere. Like, why isn't that person not using their hands? When we talk, our hands are a natural extension of what we're speaking about. And it's one of those things like, what do I do with my hands? Ricky Bobby, shake or bake. People, for some reason, get so confused when they get up here, like, what? I set them right here and talk with them, like we usually do. Exactly how you would have an everyday conversation. So that is where we are going with our hands. If you do have to use the death grip, and that is comfortable for you at this time, there are 3 places where you can incorporate your use of your hands. That is to enumerate items. So we could say something like, first, I'll talk about the use of political power in this artifact, and second, I'm going to talk to you a bit about how it is used to create community, so you can understand how this fulfills the function of social rhetoric. Then you go back. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about how it incorporates political power, right? And second, and then you can do it like so. You can also do it to do sizes. She was this big, she was this tall, was this short. Or we can do it to make a point. Who would have guessed? Right? That is amazing. What is happening? Right? So we can utilize our hands in that way if you feel the spirit move you. If for this first speech you are using your hands ineffectively, such as this, small gestures, can the people in the back see what I'm doing? No, right? Your gestures do need to be larger to reach all the people in the back, so feel free to go outside of your comfort zone. I'm not saying you have to scream it up here, but do so. If we're doing something like fiddling with our hands, I will make note of it, and I will give you a hand signal that reminds you maybe you do need to ground yourself for a bit. If you are leaning on the podium, I encourage you to never put your hands here, because this makes it very easy to lean. If you're ever going to put your hands somewhere, you put them here, because this feels weird, right? Nobody would ever lean like this. It would make you stop leaning in that way. In regards to your feet and posture, I encourage you to take an easy, straight, boxed stance, if you will, in addressing the audience. My encouragement is always to also step back from the podium. That will eliminate your need. That will also encourage you to use your hands. But the other thing that it can fake, if you will, if you are tall, this is a very short podium. And every time I look down, it is going to be incredibly obvious to my audience. And it may be a little bit hard for me to grasp what I'm looking at. If I take a step back, now it is in my line of sight. I can see where I'm at, and I can see where I'm going, and it allows for this natural progression of delivery. What we don't want is for you to stand back here and do some type of movement back and forth, or moving your posture, right? This is all fine and dandy in everyday conversation, but it doesn't help to communicate the message or the meaning that we're talking about. If you're moving back and forth, what are you thinking about as an audience member? Why is she moving back and forth? What the heck is that purpose? It's crazy town. So if you would like to avoid the podium altogether, in speaking, we do something, and it's called the speaker's pyramid, or the speaker's triangle. If you will, we have an introduction and a conclusion. This is your main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. You can take this knowledge and use it anywhere in the whole entire world. What if I go into a speaking environment? There's no podium. What do? Well, friends, you use the speaker's pyramid. It's pretty easy. You take your piece of paper and you don't leave it big. Why don't you leave it big? Because, again, if we have apprehension and anxiety running through our body, what is this paper going to do? Okay, shake. Fold your piece of paper in half. Super easy. You can use it and you can hold on to it like so. The speaker's pyramid works in this way. We deliver our introduction and conclusion here at the top of the classroom, and then we move, not just for any old purpose, because if I move for any old purpose, again, it doesn't have a reason. We should always move with purpose. The only people that you know who give speeches like this are what?
Crazy people.
Okay, maybe a crazy person, but also maybe a fitness person because they want you to. Yeah, motivational speakers oftentimes you'll see like this because they like to get you pumped up. Football coaches, evangelists, anybody that moves in that way. But if you're not doing a special occasion speech to get us pumped up, if you will, to go out and play that game or, right, accept the Lord, then go ahead and come back here and utilize some of the techniques that I'm going to tell you about to ground yourself. When we move in a speech, is literally on the page when your speech moves. So there are these crazy things called transitions. Have you heard about them before? Transitions get you from one point to another. And it only makes sense that that's where we would move. So these lines would be the transitions in your speech. So if I gave you my introduction, I just gave you my thesis statement about what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to give you my first transition. I'll say something like, so let's begin by looking at the social functions of rhetoric in regards to power and political power so that you can understand how this artifact justifies or fulfills the definition of social rhetoric. I told you a little bit about its relation to power. Next I'm going to tell you about how this artifact builds community so that you can understand a bit about how this fits into the realm of social rhetoric. I told you today about political power, social power, and I'd like to leave you all with this, right? So, and I'm using this so that I can be in the video, but literally you can walk over here and deliver your first one here. You'll walk on your second transition and deliver it over here, and then you'll walk back and deliver it here. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so you can always practice that on your own time. In regards to eye contact, which we were talking about. Eye contact are the windows to our culture puts a high demand on eye contact for issues of, let's talk about this, respect, right? So in our Western culture here, eye contact is a form of respect. If you ever got in trouble when you were younger and weren't looking at the individual, they would say what? Look at me when I'm talking to you, right? It is important for us. In other cultures, however, eye contact is something to show respect. You don't use eye contact, right? But that's what we are going to do in this class. Engaging the audience, letting them know that they are a part of it. And when we make eye contact with our audience, what does that make you feel? When I look at you in class, what does that make you feel?
Like you're talking to me.
Like I'm talking to you, that you are present, that this is for you, this is about you, I care about you. When somebody is lying, what do they tend not to do?
Look at you.
Right? They'll not look you in the eye. It is important that we make eye contact with our audience. Where am I looking right now?
The wall.
At the back wall. And now where am I looking? You're not fooling anyone. Unfortunately, we have to do this eye contact thing. If you, ideally, what we want to do is to be able to scroll the audience in whole, be able to deliver our ideas whilst scrolling and connecting. However, if you are having a hard time doing that, look down, get your sentence, look up, deliver that sentence to the first person, the next sentence to another person, and the next sentence to another person. The one thing that you do not want to do is look at one person the entire speech. Because right now, what do you feel?
I don't know, you're talking straight.
Mm-hmm. And why does that feel weird? Okay, I'm throwing it at you. I'm not putting you on the spot by it, but I'm looking only at you. So I'll tell you a little bit about my dog. My dog's name is Winston. Winston is a Cocker Spaniel. He's about 2 years old, and he's got a lot going on. So right now, does it feel weird? Yeah, it's weird. And you know who you're going to look at? Me. Because you'll be like, look at me, I'm making eye contact, I'm making eye contact. No, no, no. If you are making eye contact with only me, I will do something like this, and this means scroll the audience. Look around at everybody else. They all need to feel included as well. In regards to eye contact and having a visual aid, oftentimes people will make the mistake and utilize and look at the visual aid the entire time. If you've ever had a teacher, again, who uses PowerPoint, and they sat and they talked to the screen for the entire time. Have you ever had this?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does it lose when I turn my back?
Our attention.
Now you can do anything else that you want behind me. Doesn't matter. And other things. What happens to the volume of my voice? I'm loud. Don't have to worry about me. But not everybody's going to be loud. So we lose that volume and that connection. We want to make sure that we are speaking to our audience and that they can engage with us. So we have posture, gestures, eye contact. Let's think about facial expressions. People come in here and they will get into delivery like a deer in headlights. And this is the expression that they give. And when we have an expression like this, in turn, it goes hand in hand with something here. Our what?
Tone.
tone. And our vocal variety becomes very monotone. Exactly. To make the words and concepts and ideas come to life on your paper, it is imperative that you change up your voice and in turn have your face reflect what you are speaking about. If I said, be happy, everyone, show me what that looks like. Oh man, I'm sad for some of you. Like, this is what happy looks like? Show me when I say be happy, what does it look like?
Food.
Okay, good. And you just gave me the perfect example. When we say be happy, that you oftentimes look at this. Right? It's this fake version of happy. But if you can't fake it, and maybe the content is so nerve-wracking or isn't necessarily making you happy for some reason, I don't know, because if you're talking about it, it should make you happy or make you passionate or something. What you can do is write in your margin something that does make you happy. For example, I am thinking of the things that make me happy right now, and hopefully that is coming through to you. I'm thinking of Winston and my old dog puppy Chulo, who I love so much, and Dylan and the chat. So I can write all those things. And then when I deliver that message to you, it'll look a little bit different, right? Angry. I can't just say be angry because then it like becomes this generic whatever. But anger, there are so many things that make me angry. I can write a couple of those things in the margin. And hopefully that will encourage my vocal delivery a bit different. When you hit your punctuation marks, I encourage you to think about your next sentence. What am I going to say? What kind of emotion do I want to connect to this? And you can write those ideas in your margins if you want to. Vocal variety will come naturally to all of you, or if you are extemporaneously delivering a speech. So know that that will already come if you haven't. In your practice, you will start to notice it. The other thing that I want to talk about are vocalized causes. Let me move this over here. Oh, actually, I'll move it right here so that we can see what these are. Vocalized pauses are typically given when you have some type of punctuation mark. It's a pause, and this encourages us all to do what? Breathe. Breathing allows for you to set the pace for your presentation. In yoga, people breathe through the uncomfort in a pose so that they can move forward, so that they can develop a little bit more. In your case, if you are going through an issue of discomfort, i.e., I forgot what I was talking about. I need to look down and get my next place in line. I am looking at you, and you were looking confused, and that distracted me, so I need to go back to what I was, right? All of these things can be a little bit uncomfortable. These would be the moments beyond here that you should also take a breath. I am getting way ahead of myself. My brain is going faster than my mouth. Let me reset the pace of this speech. People will get onto a treadmill at 5.0, and they will not leave that treadmill the entire time. 5.0 the exact time. Not all sentences are meant to be said in a fast way. Think about movement or music, if you will. Music changes tempos oftentimes, adds extra beats, adds different beats, slows it down, speeds it up. It's all for the purpose of generating an emotional response from you. Again, back to this concept of aesthetics. Absolutely. That means we should do this crazy thing called breathing. So we want to breathe into our body. Oftentimes, people forget to breathe, and instead of breathing, they like to avoid having silence in their lives by replacing that with words like, like, yeah, no, no, I don't. So, or, and, in use of punctuation, we also have language, just, or actually, as filler words. People love to use these as adjectives when they don't belong there, and all they do is become a filler to the word. We also have things like wanna or gonna. What does it mean to be articulate? Does it mean that person has such a big vocabulary? All articulation means is being able to use the words and say them in the way that they were intended. Like wanna. Does that make you sound articulate and smart? It is instead want
So,
to. Good. Gonna.
Going to.
Oh, it's fantastic. Try to avoid those words. They do nothing for your credibility. They also, in real life, do nothing for your credibility. And the last thing that we will avoid in this class is the word guys. How many women or identifying women are in this classroom by a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great, 8 of us. Fantastic. So 1, you're excluding an entire demographic. 2, it's demeaning. How is it demeaning? Well, let me tell you, and this is a whole other soapbox. Come take my gender class. When we say, hey guys, it's built in, it's slang, it's language already. It's built into our everyday conversations. And we utilize it outside of the classroom or the professional environment. But when it comes into the professional environment, as well as an everyday conversation, it becomes oppressive and degrading. Let me say it, and I think it's best explained in the opposition. And in no way am I saying because you say the word guys that you are against women, okay? I'm not saying that at all. It's just one of those language things. So, for example, if there was a room full of men and I came in and I said, hello, ladies. What is this now?
boot camp.
Okay, maybe boot camp. And why do they do it in boot camp? To make you feel strong and secure and good about yourself? Why do they use the word ladies?
They're insulting you.
Aha. And it's degrading and it's demeaning, and there is nothing worse in our society that views masculinity so strongly as calling a group of men ladies. To remind you, we talk about women as if they are lower class and less than, and this is another way that it works simply into our environment. I encourage you to watch that use of the word guys in your everyday conversation, because it's very easy to say, today I'm going to tell you all. Today I'm going to tell you. Today I'm going to tell you guys and girls. No, nobody speaks like that. You're not in 5th grade. Back it up. Today I'm going to tell you. And now we've identified everybody without excluding and being oppressive. Sound good? Great. How am I going to get rid of these words, Amanda? Well, I encourage all of you that you are to practice 5 times out loud for this speech. 5 times out loud. What this will do is it will get it into your body. You will start to become familiar with it beyond writing it. The other reason that we practice out loud is that we can start to hear when something sounds that it is read and in turn not spoken. It's the 2 different voices. And the other reason that we want to practice 5 times out loud is that we want to work on avoiding these filler words. Speaking slowly is going to be your best bet for this first speech if you know you already suffer from filler words. Why do I say speak slowly? Because it allows you an opportunity to do this crazy thing called thinking before you. Yeah, people don't oftentimes take the time to think about what they're going to talk about before they say it. Again, they're on a treadmill. But when we allow ourselves to slow down, it gives us the opportunity to think before we speak and avoid the fillers. If you can, I encourage you to find somebody else to speak to or in front of. It does not have to be a professional. It does not have to be anybody that you know. But try to practice in front of another. Why do we want to practice in front of another person? They can give you feedback about the content. Does that make sense? Should I use an extra example there? Does that make sense to college students? Would you understand that analogy become clear? Or it can also allow you to do another thing.
Be comfortable when talking to other people. So when you finally deliver the speech, it's not like you're just memorizing it in front of a wall. Then when you have all these people looking at you, it could create some anxiety.
Absolutely. Good. And hearing yourself out loud. You're like, what? Who is that? Is that what I sound like? The first day you come in here, that's uncomfortable too. But in order to avoid these, if you practice it in front of somebody else, have them stop you every time you use these words. Once you are stopped, start over from the beginning. By the 3rd time you have to start over again, what will you not be doing? you will instead what? Think before you speak, because the last thing you want to do is have to what? Start over. People hate starting over. I got really into Nintendo Wii, Super Mario Brothers, like in 2010. And I think that half of my excitement of playing Super Mario Brothers with the chat and another friends of ours was that you never had to start over. This generation hates starting over. You always are like, oh, look, I have 900 new lives. I can just start over. Like, back in my day of Super Mario Brothers, once you were out of those 3, it was done, and you started back over at 1-1. You were so good at 1-1, but you were like, son of a gun, I don't want to start all back over. And thus, we go into the same idea, right? You don't want to have to start over again. So let that be a help and a guideline for you. I will also let you know that every time you will say these words is when you look down at your paper. And unfortunately, these words don't do anything to communicate meaning. What does mean? Nothing, right? Fortunately, it's a language symbol that can communicate 2 things. Either one, I don't know what people say it when they're trying to figure out what they're going to say, right? It's either that I don't know what I'm talking about, or what?
Out loud thinking.
Out loud thinking. But if I instead breathe every time I look down, if I get in the habit of breathing every time I look down, it looks normal to the audience. Oh, Amanda's just taking a breath versus, Amanda doesn't know what she's talking about. Practice it. Much like Pavlov and the dog. By the 20th time you look down and take a breath, your body will get used to that. Again, it's taking the practice and doing so. We talked about gestures, posture, eye contact, vocal variety, as well as our expression. We talked about how to use the space in movement. We also spoke a bit about your filler words and how to avoid them. The last thing I'll talk to you about is appearance. You do not have to come in dressed professionally for this class. I do not expect that. However, if you were to show up at a job interview in your pajamas, what would that communicate to the person interviewing you? That you're not serious, that you didn't care enough to get up and get ready. That being said, you should always dress at least not in the pajamas, okay? And what we want to do as well is make ourselves blank enough slates that our message is what individuals are focusing on rather than the aesthetics. We are an aesthetic-driven society. There's tons of evidence to prove that when an individual walks in, we're going to judge that book by its cover initially, and then we'll wait for what they're going to say. Your book has a lot of things on it that it can be speaking, i.e. if I'm using a logo or if I have a logo on my shirt, people will stare at that logo rather than looking at you. It is important that we, in turn, continue to make ourselves those blank slates. So don't wear a logo, don't wear a hat on the day that you're speaking. It avoids our ability to see your eyes, and that's what we need to see for your eye contact. Does that make sense to everyone? Great. Anything else that we want to talk about today? Yeah.
Do you have any tips for talking with your hands too much? Because I feel like a lot of times I look like an insane person. I'm doing multiple track.
I'll tell you if that happens. It may be in your everyday conversation you are, but in your public speaking you may not. So if something is happening, we can work on a couple techniques for you. The best part may be not utilizing the podium and in turn utilizing the movement, because then you have one hand that's already like grounded in something. It's usually when we have a constant or something that we can ground ourselves in, and it helps a bit. Anybody else have questions about this delivery? Sure.
So you're going to be taking points off the way we dress on our speeches?
I don't want you to wear a logo or a hat.
Okay.
Because it distracts from the content. Otherwise, if you're not in fall fashion, you can still pass. Does that make sense? Is that clear? That I'm not grading you on your aesthetic?
Does this count as a logo?
That does. Copy that.
Yes.
That's fine. Anybody else? All right. Let's talk about the content of this speech, shall we? Now that we've done the delivery, if you flip on over to the second page, you are going to see a handy format here, and I'll put it up on our board behind us to give you some insight about how
how you're going to format this speech. Every single speech that you have in this class is going to be organized in the exact same way. If you do not get this format today, it is imperative that you come and you talk to me about it. Because we'll use it every time. And in order for you to be successful, you'll want to have this effective pattern of organization. Is this organizational pattern different from anything that you've seen before or heard before? Not so much. We use a particular pattern of organization depending on the type of speech that we're giving in order for our audience to receive the message most effectively. We talked about that when we talked about Aristotle and the idea of arrangement, remember? That if a problem-cause-solution speech will elicit, problem-cause-solution because we want you to go out and do something. It doesn't work the same way if I'm trying to tell you that cheeseburgers are the best ever. We have to have a different pattern of organization. This pattern of organization is most effective to your audience, and that's why we organize it in that way. Every single speech that you have in this class is going to start off with what you can see here is called an intro. Yes, everybody, it's called an introduction. Isn't that exciting? An introduction introduces our audience to what we are going to be speaking about. If I come right out and say, today, everybody, I'm going to talk about gun control, what's half the audience going to do? Is everybody super excited about gun control right now?
No.
Okay, what if I say, hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about snails. How many of you are excited? We never come right out and tell our audience exactly what we are going to speak about. We need something before we get the audience into our actual topic. And what this is called is an attention, what? It's right there? An attention getter, absolutely. And by definition, an attention getter's job is to gain the attention of the audience, absolutely. I need to give you an attention getter so that by the time I get around to telling you about snails, you are already so pumped up and so excited and so interested that you're like, snails. And that's what we want our audience to do. When we come out and we say, hello everybody, my name is so-and-so and today I'm talking about this, then you go into your attention getter, it makes no sense. The attention getter is the first thing that you should say. So what types of attention-getting devices can we use? All of us are going to need to use one, and all of you will have to have one for this first speech as well as all the other speeches that you'll get. So what types of attention-getting devices are there? If you've ever taken a basic English class, you've used some of them already. Such as?
A fact.
A fact. Why not talk about a fact? Fantastic. Or a? Story. I love a story. So fun. Or a?
Question.
Oh, a question. Fantastic. This brings up an excellent point. The idea of a question. In a question, in a paper of English, like Yoda, if you're writing an English paper and you use a question, who answers that question? What types of questions are they? What are they called? Oh my gosh, y'all, right? We talked about rhetorical questions at the beginning of the semester. Rhetorical question isn't necessarily a question that doesn't demand an answer. It's instead a question of which answer is already known or implied through the question. We draw our audience to that kind of cohesion and understanding through the question. A rhetorical question does not demand an answer. However, you have a bunch of people in front of you in an audience, and they are all loose cannons. Let's be honest. If you've ever been in a classroom before, you know that things can go awry at any second because there's going to be that one person that even though you ask a rhetorical question, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, and then they're going to add their 2 points. If it is a rhetorical question, it is up to you as a speaker to guide the audience and let them know that this is not something that needs to be answered. So how would you say that? If you and I were having an everyday conversation and you wanted me to listen before I gave my 2 cents, what would you say before you started the story? We were having an everyday conversation. Any words will do. Say something now. That means you all. Do you need me to ask the question again? Are you distracted by all this? Okay, here we go. Ready? We were having an everyday conversation, and it was like one of those ones like, oh my gosh, guess who I saw yesterday? Don't answer. What could you say to the audience if you didn't want them to answer a question?
Don't answer.
Don't answer this, but take a second to think about it. Take a second to ponder this question I'm going to present, right? Or take a moment and think about this statement. I don't want you to respond to it, but that kind of qualifier lets your audience know exactly what they're supposed to do. The same thing happens when I say, how many of you have brothers and sisters? 4, 5 of us. 6 of us? 7, 8. Why did we not raise our hands initially?
We didn't think about it.
Okay, you had to think of 2. Did you? If I ask a question then, people also know socially that when somebody's in front of an audience speaking, you should not what? Talk or speak, absolutely. Unless we're in a classroom environment, which we are, we know that we are typically required to participate, but people don't know to talk. So if I did something like, how many of you have brothers and sisters? Now what have I done? I've given you a symbol to let you know what I want you to do, and that is to
Raise your hand.
But some of us like to keep our heads down the entire lecture, or some of us may come in late, or some of us may not be paying attention at all, or taking notes, or maybe even sleeping. And so if I said, how many of you have brothers and sisters, would everybody know what to do? No. And also, if we have somebody who is vision impaired, would they know what to do? No. So what do you say? By a... there we go, by a raise of hands, by a by a what, however you want your audience to participate, you tell them. You say it, maybe you gesture it, and you do it yourself so that they know how to participate. Because the second that your audience goes off track, it's going to be hard to get them back in. And this is your time. You have 2 to 3 minutes, right? So that's a good idea about questions. You can use a fact, a story, a question, a quotation, an interesting statistic, perchance. Any of these are fair game. But something that gets us really excited and interested into your speech, that by the time you get about to revealing the topic, we're like, in. Can't wait to hear the rest of this. Does that make sense? Okay, great. The second thing that you are going to do in your introduction, because you are required to have these 3 things, they're each worth points if you see in your evaluation sheet, is to reveal the topic. The reveal topic portion of this speech is for you to give us any type of background information that we may need to know about something we are going to address in the body of this speech, but the audience may not have knowledge about. So remember, to whom am I speaking? What is their level of knowledge? What do they know? Are they going to need a lot of background information before we actually get into the body of this speech, or are they going to need a little bit of information? It's just like when you're watching TV and they do those things called previously on Nashville. What are they telling you on Nashville? Or this previously on? They're telling you what?
This is the important stuff that's going to be added to.
Absolutely. Are they going to cover all 6 seasons of Nashville and that previously on? No. They're going to highlight only the important elements that are going to be relevant to this particular episode. The same thing happens. The second that your audience gets lost in the middle of an episode, they typically change the channel. You do not want your audience to change the channel or get lost. So in turn, we go ahead and we let them know this background information. For all of you, if you are not going to talk in the body of your speech about what this artifact is, what it says on the document, when it was produced, how many people viewed it. All of this can be very helpful information in developing the body of this speech. Who produced it? What was the ad? Where was it published? In what state? Etc. If we can't see it or read it, this would be a good time to point out the words or maybe some of the fine print that the audience can't identify. That's where that part of the speech is going to come in. The other thing that you will want to do here is identify any type of technical jargon or slang language that your audience may not be privy to. So when we talk about slang, again, it's a professional environment. You can utilize slang, but remember that slang is only effective in as much as your audience understands it. I'd hate to remind everybody about this, but oftentimes my students will be talking and using language and terminology that I am so not privy to. Like, I can't believe how
old, I feel sometimes, because I'm like, what does that mean? It's not even proper grammar. I don't understand it. I can't get my head around it. So this may be, remember, who is your audience? What are they about? What do they know? The other thing is that if you are super smart and knowledgeable about a topic and you work in this environment every day, that's great. And using that kind of technical jargon is going to be very effective in your own environment or with a group of your own fellow occupational peers. Beyond that, you may need to explain some language for us. So make sure you're doing that. For all of you, the reveal topic portion in this speech is also going to be where you reveal your what? So feel free to deliver your attention getter from here, from the podium over there if you would like to. You can always deliver your attention getter from here. And then what we could say something like, how many of you love thrill seeking by a show of hands? 4 of us in this classroom. I certainly love thrill seeking. That is why I brought in this photo to show to you all today. And then what we could do is go into the description of this thrill seeking. Does that make sense to you? Okay, great. What we want to make sure is that when we reveal the topic and once we reveal the picture is going to be up there the entire time. But as you will learn in the visual aid speech, you will never sit there and talk to your visual. You will instead Vanna White it. If you are utilizing the document camera you can utilize or use and put your podium over here. Would you turn that? If you would like that. And what you can do is in turn, do I need to go over to that area? No, I do not. What instead I could do is point to it where? Here. Oh, look at what, socialization, binder clip. Ooh, name, not proper in MLA format, but that's okay. They'll just get 18 points marked. And we can point to it from here, right? And we can come back over here and we can deliver our speech. And then once I want you to notice something again, what do? I put it here. But what are you all staring at right now?
You.
No, you're not. We're looking at these words that literally have nothing on it. Like, what the heck? Remember that in regards to a visual aid. Oftentimes people will stare at the visual aid instead of staring at you. So it is imperative that you all, by using voice and by using your face and by getting out there, you will continue to keep the focus on you until you want them to focus back on the visual aid. Okay. The last thing that all of you need to know, second to last thing. Thank you. If when going from the attention getter to the reveal topic portion, it is very important that you make a connection there. What does that mean, make a connection? Let me do this. How many of you love thrill seeking? Oh, I see 4 of us. Fantastic. My name is Amanda, and today I'm going to talk about my dog and the foods I like to eat.
Okay.
What are you still thinking about?
Thrill seeking.
What does this have to do with thrill seeking? Right? Your job is to connect those 2 things. By a show of hands, how many of you love thrill seeking? Ooh, I see that 4 of us do. Well, I do too. My name is Amanda, and I love to thrill seek, but not in the way that you may expect. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about my dog, and I'm also going to tell you about the new foods I love to try, which in my opinion is my version of thrill seeking. Let's get started, right? And so we can make that connection.
I like it.
Thank you. Does that make sense to everybody? Great. The last thing you're going to give is a thesis statement. This is not the same as in English. We don't want some random, obscure sentence that alludes to the concept that we are talking about. In 2 to 3 minutes and in public speaking, you don't have a piece of paper in front of you, and your job is to tell us exactly what you are going to talk about. So how will you do this? You can all write it in this fashion. And I believe that please no thesis statement. Yes, so I wrote one up there for us all. A thesis statement is a combination of 2 things. It is a combination of your central idea and your main points. The central idea is what your speech is about. And the main points are how you will discuss what your speech is about. What is this speech about?
you are going to tell us what? I wrote one out for you. Feel free to use this one. In order for you to understand how this artifact fulfills the definition of social rhetoric, that's what your purpose is, right? To tell the audience how your artifact fulfills the functions of social rhetoric. So that's what you can say. Today, I'm going to explain to you how this artifact from Elle magazine fulfills the definition of social rhetoric. Today, I'm going to tell you how this t-shirt photo represents the function of social rhetoric. Does that make sense to everybody? Fantastic. But then how are we going to do that? You won't just leave it there. You're like, okay, well then how are you going to do it? Well, this is where we come up with our main points. Because of our pattern of timing, and really quickly, I am going to say, for those of you who need to leave, you go ahead and go quietly now. If you did not grab, oh crap, hold on, what do we need to do? Okay, hold on, this is what I'm going to stop this. Somehow I'll merge these two together. Can't we push pause? Is there pause? Edit. No. What? Copy.
You can just turn it off and then use iMovie and just click